Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's webinar. And we're going to introduce you to the Oasis Hub and through this pre-launch over the next 30 minutes. I'd like to thank you for taking the time. It's very difficult towards the end of the year to try and squeeze some time in, so thank you for doing that. And I'm sure you're all suffering from kind of webinar fatigue, so we'll kind of keep this light and moving. Throughout the course of the webinar, if you've got questions to ask, please feel free to type them in your little control panel, which you can move to one side. There's a little orange arrow. You can move your control panel to one side. Type in a question and we'll collect them. We'll have a time for Q&A at the end when we can take you off mute and allow you to ask any questions. Yeah, so there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So what we're going to cover, just a little bit of an agenda. So we're going to give you a little bit of an introduction and some background and set some context as to why it's important to have something like the Oasis Hub now. Then I'll give you kind of a preview of the site and kind of walk you through an overview, and then we'll actually dive in and have a walk around the site and look at some of the key features. And then, like I say, there'll be a Q&A. What I'm also doing as well is I'm recording the webinar, and you'll be sent a link to the recording in the next day or so. And a little bit later on, I will push a couple of handouts to you. So in your control panel, there's a little handout section and a couple of things that will appear in there later on. One of them is a frequently asked questions document, and the other one is a copy of this presentation in PDF format as well. So you'll have a little package of things to take away at the end of the webinar. So a little bit about me. I'm Jim Craig. I'm the Technical Marketing Director for the Oasis Hub. And the Oasis Hub is an initiative that's supported by Climate Kick, who are part of the European Union EIT programme. And my background is in IT, is in software, typically software product marketing and product management. And most recently, the last 10 years or more, I've been involved with software and technology that helps in the environmental space or in the social space in some way, shape or form. And my role at Oasis is to work with the development team to set the product direction and make sure that things are delivered on time. So a little bit of background next as to why we need the hub and where the hub has come from. And we'll start by just looking at the demand for data at the moment and the challenges around that data. We're seeing kind of an exponential growth in data, and a lot certainly in the financial markets, a lot of that is driven by the need to do responsible investing, and specifically in the insurance sector to kind of better understand the risk, to improve the process of underwriting. What's kind of priming the pump and what's really kind of causing this sort of explosion in data is a lot of research funding. So a lot of academic and commercial research organizations are being funded to produce increasingly large amounts of data. Now, the challenge with this is that although there's more data out there, it's not always easy to source the data that you need for the particular task that you're working on. It's not always easy to review the data. It can be quite opaque or quite technical in nature, and licensing isn't always clear and easy to understand as well. So throughout the whole system, from the data provider and the data publisher through to the data consumer, the practitioner, there's lots of friction in the system, and the Oasis Hub is really designed to reduce that friction right the way across the whole sort of value chain. Current data platforms have some limitations. Their functionality can be quite limited, and this is largely due to a lot of the data platforms being very domain specific at the moment. That's the nature of the beast. It's not a criticism, it's just kind of an attribute of the way the systems have been developed. So you have systems that are quite narrow in focus but very, very deep, looking at geology and meteorology and flooding and that sort of thing. So the functionality is quite limited, but that's kind of by virtue of what they're doing. The scope and the market can be quite fragmented as well. The systems are largely developed by experts for an expert audience, and again, sort of driven by the commercial routes. The academic routes. The data is largely non-commercial. So when a commercial organisation wants to take data on board and use it in a commercial operation, it can hit some challenges around licensing and the right to use. And also, again, a little bit to do with the kind of narrower domain focus of the data platforms is that they can be quite lacking in terms of their scale and their vision. So this is really areas where the hub is really designed to address these challenges. This quote from the OECD, if you kind of sort of paraphrase it or replay it another way, it's really about getting the right data into the hands of the right people in order that they can make the right decisions, so they can develop adaptation strategies and implement them really, really quickly. So you know, I don't need to tell you that, you know, the window of opportunity is closing even more rapidly now. So we need to turn this data into actions and adaptation strategies that can be implemented really, really quickly. And that's really what the hub is all about. So what is it, first of all? Well, it's an online portal. It's a marketplace for the creators of data to be able to publish that data in a way that practitioners, that consumers can purchase it. And that's environmental data, adaptation planning tools, models and services. And we'll the way the hub has been designed is it's incredibly extensible, so we can grow out with new categories of data and new categories of tools as and when they become available. In terms of the data sources, we're working in partnership with a whole range of entities, academics, government and specialist organisations, as well as taking on board lots of freely available data as well. So there's a huge amount of very valuable data that's freely available, but it's not particularly easy for people to kind of understand and consume. The tools and the services, so the idea is that you can take the data and also access some tooling that's available for you to interact with that data. So you can do things like model different scenarios. There's the opportunity to engage with peers throughout your industry, but also across other industries as well, and also engage with industry experts as well. So working with our academic partners and our specialist organisations to really kind of help you achieve, you know, the results that you want to achieve far more quickly and cost effectively. So in terms of what the hub does to provide benefits, it's about reducing the time and the costs that it takes you to source data, review the data and license the data. It's about reducing the friction in the system. And the reason for that is we want to take these take adaptation from an academic theory into actionable outcomes. As I've said, the time to act is probably several years ago now, but so we need to move very, very quickly and enable people with data and tools and services to get these adaptation strategies in the works. We also see it as a way that you can create market opportunities in markets that you already have, but also to identify new opportunities as well. And I'll touch on those in a little bit more detail. What I'm going to do now is just kind of walk through some example use cases just to give you an idea of the sorts of sectors and individuals within those sectors can use the data and the tools that are available on the hub. So catastrophe modelers in insurance is a primary market, typically to validate data that's in existing models at the moment. But there's also an opportunity, which I'll talk about in a moment as well, which we think is quite exciting, not only for the insurance industry, but for many other organisations as well. So city mayors, resilience officers, country risk and resilience officers, people designing smart city infrastructures and Internet of Things designers, the data that's available on the hub is kind of an ideal source for these people to kind of roll into their development plans and to build into their development programs. Other areas in financial services, risk managers. So being able to understand what the exposure is across your portfolio of loans and assets, and the same for insurance, obviously. And then in organisations that have supply chains, you know, so typically they're the risk managers, operations managers, and supply chain managers who want to be able to understand what is their exposure to risk right across the entire value chain and across all the different tiers of suppliers as well. And of course, real estate and critical infrastructure as well. You know, there's you know, trillions of dollars invested in real estate and critical infrastructure, and it's important for people engaged in those sectors to be able to kind of understand exactly what the challenges are and what the potential impacts are from extreme weather events. And also charities and NGOs. So if you consider, you know, somewhere like the Disasters and an Emergency Committee, or Médecins Sans Frontières, or Oxfam, for example. So organisations that could use the data in a way to understand where the next disaster is likely to happen, and they can prepare themselves and yeah, so prepare and build capacity accordingly, so they can respond far more effectively when something does happen. So what I'm going to do now is, this is just a screenshot of the Hub website. So I'm just going to drop out of the presentation for the moment. Okay, so sitting in the background, I have my my web browser open. So this is the home page for the Oasis Hub, and what you're able to do is, because what we want with this system is to give you the opportunity to kind of feed back to us as much as possible. So everywhere around the site we've got this feedback button, so you can drop in your name, email address, and tell us whether you've got a feature request, you want to report a problem, and or send through a comment. So that's available throughout the site. The slideshow here, this can be used to let you know that we've got new data sets available, and it's a revolving slideshow, so you can advertise on here as well. So if there's a conference that you'd like to make members available, members aware of, then that can be posted on here as well. So the idea behind the screen, the slideshow, is it can be used to let you know what's happening inside the hub, but also what's happening externally as well, in terms of conferences, training courses, and those sorts of things. Other parts of the site, we have a free text search here, so you can type in Guatemala rainfall or Japanese tsunami and get results returned back. We also have the ability to search by category as well. Now, these are by no way an exhaustive list of categories. As I mentioned earlier on, it's an incredibly extensible application, and we'll be adding new categories for things like vulnerability and economic data over time as well. We can also feature data sets. So we've got 3 data sets featured down here, and then you can sort of dive in and read a little bit more detail about each one. And then over time, the featured data sets will display data relevant to what's happening in the external world. So recently we had earthquakes in Italy and also New Zealand. So that makes earthquake data top of mind for people. So we can have things that are relevant to what's happening in the natural world at the moment appear here. And we've got our Twitter feed here and the blog. Now I'll tell you about some other things that are coming a little bit later on, but let's just start by doing some free format searches here. So if I just wanted to search for tsunami, just simply enter the search term, and the system will go search through all the data sets we have. We have a limited number of data sets on at the moment. We have about 8 data sets loaded, and we've got 50 in total ready to go live across all those key sectors that you saw a little bit earlier on. So when you open a data set is owned by an organization. So once you create a user account in the system and you have data to upload, you would create an organization and then upload data sets. Now we don't publish data sets immediately. There's a whole back-end process, a review process that takes place, which allows a review to go on. If the data is already peer-reviewed, we just simply enter the citation reference, and then that kind of bypasses the review process. The idea behind that is that we want to make sure that the data that goes live in the hub is actually of the highest quality. So this particular data, you can tag it by the countries that it's affected by, and also we're able to support a whole range of different formats. And so if I just take you into the particular data set now, this is a tsunami run-up. So what you're able to do, the whole idea behind making the data understandable for a particular practitioner. So you're able to preview the data, so you can you can have a look at the raw data underneath, and do some sort of basic manipulations. So we can kind of sort columns out here and get a sense for what the data looks like. What I'm also able to do as well is to also do some graphing. So the idea behind that again is to make the data more accessible to a user. And let's go here. What's important? Water height. So you can see some samples of the data. You can chart it. You get more of a sense for what the data means to you in a kind of a real world environment. And what's also particularly important as well with the data is being able to view the extent of the data as well. So each of the data sets has at least a sample of data that can be loaded. As those of you that work with data sets know that these things can grow to quite some size. So we do some work in the back end. We do some pre-processing to make the data easier to consume and on slower connections. And then the idea is that if somebody wanted to download this data, you would first need to log in, but you can click the download button here, log in, and then download the data. If it's free data, then you can just download it and take it away. If it's commercial data, then there's a shopping cart where you buy the data and take that away with you. For developing nations, developing economies where they might not have the infrastructure to deliver huge data sets, what we have is a fulfillment mechanism. So we'd actually send out a USB hard drive with the data and any tools that they needed as well that were available on the site. So the idea is that we can kind of get them up and running despite any challenges they might have from a technology perspective. So that was looking at data and accessing data through a free format search. The other area that I mentioned is that you can actually go through and look at data by category. So if I click on the landslide category, system returns everything that's to do with landslides. So we've got some landslide data here from Australia, and it's available in a number of different formats. You can have everything zipped together, or you can have it as a GeoJSON, and there's also a CSV file as well. So similar example, just looking at the sample data, you can see there's a huge amount of data available just in this one particular data set. So you can see it displayed on the map, and then you can actually drill in and look at the record relevant to that particular location on the map. So again, this is all about the user experience and making the data visible and easy to use for a user. The final area that we are working on, it's still kind of work in progress, and there's a lot of development work going on at the moment. The ability to be able to search by map, so I can select a country, in this case the United Kingdom, and then it will return all the records that have a reference to the United Kingdom in there. The other thing I can do is choose a particular category and a country, and then that will kind of filter things down for me. So if we look at historical flooding for the UK, and the idea by having these different approaches is some people are driven by a particular category of data. You know, you are the volcano guy, or you're the earthquake girl, or you're driven by a particular geography. So you know, you do work in Bangladesh, for example, so you want to go straight to a country and maybe look at a range of different hazards for that particular country. So you can see in this example, this is historical flooding for the River Thames in London. So that's just a kind of a very quick kind of walkthrough on the website and where we are at the moment. Just going back now to the slides, what I'd like to do is just let you know what's coming up in the very near future. So as I said, there's development work constantly going on. So things that are happening, crowdsourcing, this is something that we're particularly excited about. Crowdsourcing is a way for you to identify gaps in the coverage that you might have, gaps in data, gaps in skills, gaps in tools. And the idea behind crowdsourcing is that you can drop a request into a crowdsourcing application, and then you get responses back to that. What you can do is actually collaborate collaborate on a response to that particular request. We see that as particularly powerful for developing economies. It might be that a particular economy needs data, but from a commercial standpoint, it's not viable to do. So say, for example, you wanted flooding data for Vietnam, just as an example, and to produce that it was $30,000. And a company might say, well, that's too much. We wouldn't get that as a return. But three companies could collaborate and put $10,000 in and get the data. But what they're also able to do then is provide that data to that developing economy. You see, this is kind of and it's not just insurance companies. It's any organisation can collaborate using crowdsourcing. So we're particularly excited about that. And the way we would get that back is the way that presents itself on the site is in a similar way. We'll have some icons, so you can dive into the crowdsourcing application by region, look at it by a particular risk type, or if you are interested in a particular sector, for example, transport or energy supply, then you can look at crowdsourcing by those particular categories. In terms of tools and services, we're kind of focusing very much on data at the moment, but they're in very short order. There will also be a tools section as well. We're starting with open source tools, obviously, because they're freely available, but also the ability to offer services through the site as well. They could be consulting or advisory services. And then the fully integrated mapping. What you've seen so far is the ability to choose a country and see what data is available. That's extending very shortly. So the idea is that, you know, if you're interested in landslides, you select landslide from the category chooser, and then that will highlight everywhere on the map where we have landslide data, and then you can drill in by country. So the idea is that you can either come at it from a category perspective, or you can come at it from a geographical perspective. Okay, and this is just where those sections will live on the site. So you've seen the slideshow, the free text search, the extensible category chooser, featured data, and Twitter, and then we'll have tools and services and crowdsourcing as applications that will appear on the home page. Okay, so Q&A. I'm going to start the Q&A with a question for you guys, really, because what we're looking at doing is kind of building out the site so it best supports you, and the best way to do that is to let you have a test drive of it. So like I say, you'll get a copy of these slides. So if you go to oasishub.uk, create an account, and then start using the site and use the feedback button to tell us what you think. And also, if there are specific data sets that you're looking for, or specific tools or services that would help you in what you're doing, then if you can kind of feed that back to us, we can with the network we have, the growing network we can start to work together to help you kind of fulfill on those sorts of things. So that was what I wanted to start the Q&A with a question for you. Do any of you have questions? I'm just trying to see whether we've got any questions coming in so far. If there's any questions, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to type them into the little questions box, and we can see them on screen and we can reply to them. Or if you have a question that you want to ask, then if you raise your hand, there's a little icon to raise your hand. I get a little warning message on my control panel. I can take you off mute, and you can ask a question. We've got one question coming in here, so let me take you off mute, and I'll probably get your name. Is it Beat? Let me unmute. Hi, you're off mute now. Is that Beat? Hello? No, sorry.
So can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Hello.
Hello, it's Beat speaking from Swiss Re. My question goes in the direction of, do you actually have modeling data available in that platform as well, that fit any of the open source platform, for example, Oasis?
The plan is that we don't have at the moment, but that's one of the things that we're working on. Basically, the hub will consume any sort of data. So we're working with the guys at Oasis LMF. So that's for those of you that don't know, that Oasis LMF is an open source software platform, and which produces open models for use by the insurance industry. So when we have LMF models, they will be made available through the hub as well. So we'll be able to take a model from LMF and make it available in the hub. Does that help?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just seeing if we've got any more questions. Timeline. So we've got a couple of questions that have come in via text. So questions on the timeline. Timeline to launch. So we're doing a pre-launch now. So you can go to the website and you can log in, create an account. Create account and then log in, and then start to use the site. And we'll build the number of data sets out over the coming few days. So you'll be able to experience the site and then kind of feed back to us as to what sort of functionality you'd like to see, what sort of data sets and that sort of thing. And then we'll do a full launch in the early part of 2017. Right. Right. How is the vulnerability in the hazard data on the web page related to the Oasis modeling format? What we will do is we will act as a repository for data in LMF format. So when LMF produces a model output, then we will store that in the hub, and it will be categorized as an LMF model, and it will sit within it will sit in the relevant category that it relates to. So in the same way that you saw GeoJSON data for landslides in Australia, you'll see LMF data for whatever it might be in whatever region. Another question that's come in. Roadmap for adding data sets. Data sets are being added. We've started quite slowly, just as we test the system, because there are a number of different challenges. Say, for example, the way earthquake data is recorded. So what we're looking at doing is kind of making the upload process for the providers of data as smooth as possible. So we're literally adding data on a daily basis. We have around about 50 data sets that are almost ready to go. So we've got 8 in there as a test at the moment, but we'll be in the next few weeks we'll be up to 50 really quickly, and then in the early part of the new year we'll start to build out more of the kind of commercially available data sets as well. Okay, and I just wanted to send you some files. What I also wanted to do as well is that, you know, there's been a lot of information passed over to you, and thank you for the questions that have come through. What we'd like, obviously, is you to, you know, sign in, log in, create an account, and start to use the system, start to feed back things you like, the way things work at the moment, and how you would like them to develop over time. You can also get in touch with me directly by email and phone and Skype, and we have a Twitter handle and also our own LinkedIn page as well. And I just wanted to push a couple of files over to you. Let's move this out of the way. So you can take them away with you. So there will be a copy of the presentation in PDF, and also a frequently asked questions document as well, because obviously we understand we can't convey everything in half an hour. But please feel free to use the site, log in, and really kind of, you know, just work with it from you know, how you use it in kind of in your daily life, and then feed that experience back to us, because like I say, it's incredibly extensible, and we you know, we're building a community. It is a membership site, and so, and you know, like any community, it's driven by the interaction and the integration of its users. So if there are no more questions, I will end the webinar there. But I'd just like to thank you all very much for your time, and if there are any more questions, you have my contact details now. So there's one more question that's come in before we go. Just some questions on publishing the data sets. Will publishing the data sets cost on the hub? That is a yo. If the data is freely available, then no, there's no charge. But if the data set provider would like to charge for that data set, then yes, there will be a charge. And Oasis HUB will take a commission for kind of the curation and the sort of management of that data. A couple of other questions. Yes, the data sets charged, some are, some aren't. And yes, the page is live now. You can register. Someone saying they can't register. That's a challenge with it being in development phase. We will check on that one as soon as I finished with the webinar. I'll check with the development team and keep checking back. And you should be able to register pretty soon. But if there are no more questions, I'd just like to thank you all very much for your time and for your questions and your interest. Please log in, create an account, have a look around, feedback to us, and we look forward to working with you on this. And if I don't speak to you before, have a great Christmas and New Year. Thank you all very much, and bye for now.